Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are in the world. Welcome to today's monthly webinar. My name is Tolu, and I am hosting this month's webinar. I am an assistant secretary here at the board of Voice of Men 360. Let me just tell you a little bit more about Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a nonprofit organization founded in 2020 and is based in Toronto, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing the tremendous need of boys and men and stepping up to provide services to help support and overcome their life's challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 21 years and so far in 90 countries around the world. So they have joined together and they do various activities on a regular basis. IMD follows 6 pillars, which is the overall well-being of boys and men. We follow in the same footsteps. We hold these monthly webinars to create awareness on topics such as the one we will be talking about today, which is on autism. As you may not be aware, April is recognized as World Autism Month, and April 2nd is recognized as World Autism Awareness Day. And so the United Nations actually sanctioned World Autism Awareness Day for April 2nd. Throughout the month of April, the aim is to focus on sharing stories and providing opportunities to increase understanding and acceptance of people with autism, fostering worldwide support. To be clear, we may be interchangeably using person with autism or autistic, as the term autistic has been found to be preferred by the majority of autistic adults, family, friends, and parents, while professionals choose to use the term person with autism when we do work with individuals with autism. Before I introduce our special guest today, I would like to go through our disclaimer. So we would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episodes are those of our speakers and do not represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness to the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We're not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have questions or concerns about today's episodes or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. So today we have 2 special guests with us. Our first one is James Stephen. So he received his diploma from Sir Sandford Fleming as a social service worker over 30 years ago, and he has worked for 30 years in the Catholic School Board as an educational assistant, mostly with children with autism. Also, during those 30 years, he has worked in various residential treatment homes, mostly with adults with autism. 2 years ago, he started Autism in Perspective, which is a business he is growing to help parents and guardians of children with autism to form a greater bond with their children and help them succeed. He usually posts various videos explaining tools and ideas he has used over the years with his students and clients to help them enter their world. Eventually, as the business grows, he plans on doing talks to groups to share what he has learned through his work. He is currently working on a course outline that provides parents the keys to unlock their children's world and help them attain their potential. The next guest we also have is Patrick Ahern. He's a 35-year-old father of a healthy and vibrant 12-year-old young woman. He's experienced in corporate management, serial entrepreneurship, and most recently created a business brand focusing on health services and providing respite and relief care for families at their toughest time, autism, medical, and geriatric relief. He's also involved in real estate, financial markets, and also he's a soon-to-be metaverse content creator. Ooh, that sounds exciting. So we would like to welcome Patrick and James to today's webinar. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having us today. And I think this talk's going to be a little bit more focused on James and his personal experience. Mine tends to be a little bit more on the, I would say, the business. I did a lot of stuff with the ministry and dealing with that aspect. So James is going to be your day-to-day, that type of content stuff. So yeah.
Pat tends to undersell himself a little bit. We are a power team together. We make creations. A lot of Autism in Perspective that I've done is because Pat was there listening to me, molding me, sending me in the right direction. He is a gifted person to
well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And now we'll get back to the original meaning of what we were talking about.
I'm loving the love here. It's fantastic. It's always great when we see, people working together in unity and harmony, and it's for a greater cause. It's for a greater good, which is in terms of helping people with autism. So, Patrick, you mentioned you're more on the business aspect,
Right.
and I do think a lot of times, yes, the business aspect is important, given that a lot of services, there's still a lot of people on wait list for services for autism in Ontario. So a lot of times families are turning to the private sector. And then James, you've worked in the school system. You've been like engrossed in it in the last 30 years. And so, and I do believe you have a wealth of information as well to share with us today. So let me ask you guys, and I'm not sure if either one of you want to answer this question, but for people that are not so clear on autism, because I think oftentimes it's misunderstood, and people, think that, oh, it's something they can catch, or they're afraid of people with autism. Let me ask you the question: what is autism, or what is autism spectrum disorder?
Well, that for me, that's a tough question that I tend to answer very carefully, because there is so much misinformation out in the community. And to tell you the truth, I'm not a doctor, so I can speak from personal experience through the kids that I have helped, the parents that I've helped, other people that I've met, and I've worked with kids from 5-year-old to 35-year-old to 50-year-old, all different and all needing unique things. But in my opinion, from working from them, which is clearly just my opinion, autism is unique to the individual. I believe autism, there's a saying, I did not create it: when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Absolutely true. The things that are similar, though, is they tend to be kind of locked in a different world. They tend to have a hard time reaching out to the other world, whether they are nonverbal or verbal. I've worked with adults who are higher end autism. I believe they call it level 5, used to be Asperger's. Although they can reach the world, they seem normal and everything. They have day-to-day problems. Like I had one student was told by a teacher to go out in the hall. Well, we all know if we're supposed to go out in the hall, you stand outside by the door. Well, in his case, the hall is huge. So he started wandering around the hall and got into more trouble. But he didn't think that it was like, but I'm in the hall. I don't understand. And that was a whole conversation. So for them, it's just hard for them to mitigate a world where all of the rules and all of the unwritten rules are out there and no one explains them to them. Like, even if you look at us, when we grow up to be a man, my dad's not telling me all the rules. I'm just watching them. My friends aren't telling me the rules of the playground. I'm just watching them and learning them. And they struggle with that. The other thing I found is they struggle with drive. When you want to, like, especially in a school, when the teacher tells me to sit down and do work, I do it because I want the teacher to be happy. I want to make the teacher smile at me, give me a gold star. Well, that doesn't drive most people with autism. What drives them is completely different. What drives them could be like Thomas the Train. Like, you just don't know what drives them. Right. So you have to meet them on their level. So I'm not sure I described autism. It's very complicated, very complex, but that's what I think autism is.
Right. And I do love that you said when you meet one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's not the same across the board. It looks different in individuals. Different things will drive them, motivate them. Some of them are able to, they do speak, and some of them do not speak. Some of them do, self-stimulate. Some of them don't. So there's a lot of different things that will define what autism is, but it can definitely look different from each child. Now, do you have anything you would like to add to that, Patrick?
No, I think James kind of hit it there. I think where we sometimes get off on track a little bit is when we start describing a massive group of people with a stereotypical view. And that's in all aspects, whether it's autism, whether it's, racially, whether it's whatever. And that's where I think that, some of these talks and these conversations that we're having, while they're fantastic, we have to be careful of like a misinformation kind of piece. We have to be able to take the ideological perspectives that we're learning here and talking about and guiding it back to Timmy, Tommy, or Sally, whatever that individual needs themselves. And that's where I go back to is what James is putting together with his program with Autism and Perspectives really focuses on skill sets. and helping parents kind of, like he says, unlock their individual child through the tools that he's providing with his tons of years of experience. So like I say, is I think that we always have to be a little bit cognizant of the overreaching brush, if you will, for these sorts of things. But we have to individualize all of this. And it goes back to some of the things that I want to talk about today eventually is kind of the policy stuff that we're seeing with the ministry, how they're funding it, what they're going to be doing with some of the family stuff. And for lack of a better words, I think they've done a fairly good job trying to individualize funding platforms, individualize the care plans that they're looking for these clients. It needs work. There's obviously more work to be done. But I think that's what we've been doing for the last few years. And I think we've come a long way. I think a lot of people that would be found in this situation would agree that the funding, the resources, the support that's out there right now versus 10, 15 years ago, it's exponentially better. So,
yeah. So, and I definitely like that you say, yeah, let's not put people in a box at all. Let's, this is it's a very tricky thing to discuss in terms of what is defining autism. And so you mentioned that, yes, what James is doing is working on unlocking, like helping parents unlock their child, to understand their child, and to work better with their child. So let's talk about that. What do you guys think is the biggest hurdle that parents or caregivers need to overcome to help their child with autism? Either one of you could answer.
Sorry, I'm kind of new to the whole podcasting. So my thoughts, there's so many hurdles. So in a parent's life, like when I was a parent, all day I'm going to work. I come home, I'm tired. I got to make dinner. I have other kids probably that I have all of these distractions. I have all of these extra things that are going to take me away from spending that extra time that's needed with a child with autism. And the biggest key, the biggest way you can help your child, in my opinion, is observation. Because observation is what's going to help you unlock your child. Because the only way you can possibly make a ring of keys to unlock all the complex things that a child with autism has is if you observe what drives them, if you observe what makes them upset, if you observe what makes them afraid, if you observe that light over there is blinking and it's driving them crazy, if you observe how they communicate, you have to observe. Well, that takes time. And, fortunately for me, because I have a career in it, I get paid. So I can spend an 8-hour day with the child and all I do is observe. So it is what it is. So it is very easy for me. But for a parent with all that distraction where their child is always in the back of their mind, like when I get home, I'm going to have to deal with this and I don't want to upset them. And it's way easier for me to just like hand them the iPad. So I get the moments of peace I need. We've all been there. But I think the biggest thing a parent can do is denote some time every night, whether it's an hour, a half hour, 2 hours, where you can just sit and observe. I'm not saying direct them, not saying telling them to do anything, just observe them. Learn who your child is, because the only way you can enter a child with autism's world or adult with autism world is to meet them on their level. You're not going to force them into a box. You have to come to them. And then afterwards, once you unlock and you get to know and you join in spirit, then they'll be able to come out. You'll be able to coax them into like where you're at. Observation is the biggest point.
And that's great. And, it's something that I often preach to parents when I work with them. I always say, know your child, study your child, know your child. And this is basically what you're saying. It's no different from working with a child that is developing typically, right? And so it's telling your child, just make sure you observe your child and know what makes them tick, what causes them to get upset. Is it, like you said, the lights? Is it something else? And so that way you can enter into their world. Now, that being said, you mentioned that, you're doing this, 8 hours because you're working in the school but the parents, are not always able to do that. But you're encouraging parents to try to find the time to give at least an hour to 2 hours and dedicate it to their child in the evenings, right? Let me ask you a question. So you mentioned the challenges that sometimes children or adults with autism may have. Can you kind of share with us some more common challenges? And I know that we're not it's not across the board for everybody with autism, but some more common challenges that children and adults with autism may have.
Absolutely. So two main challenges that I've faced with pretty much every person I've worked with. The first is communication. So if you can't figure out how your child communicates, and every child has a way of communication, whether it's through body language, through verbal, through facial expressions, they have a way to communicate that you just don't know yet. You will find it. It may be very small, like it's not going to be huge, but there'll be some way that you can see needs, wants, etc. If you think about your day, and you wake up in the morning and you're like, I want cereal, and no one around you knows what you're saying. They don't know that you want cereal. They don't know. And then I put on these socks and they're scratchy. I don't want to wear those socks, but I have no way of telling anyone how about the socks. And then right after that, there's a TV program on. Well, I don't like that TV program. I want something else. And there's no way of telling how to do that. So communication, you have to find a way to teach your child how to have an expressive communication and a receptive communication, how to understand you and how to express what their wants and needs. And then the other thing would be you have to figure out what drives them. You have to figure out you need to understand what makes them want to participate, what do they love, and you need to use that to help them move outwards. I hope I answered that.
So learning how they communicate and what drives them. So now, Patrick, you mentioned that you've done a lot of work with the ministry and with policies, and so tell us a bit more about. You mentioned, yes, like the program, the way funding for autism has changed over the years, and I know that a lot of people were initially upset when our current premier brought about some changes. So, and then I don't know what's been going on with the pandemic. I haven't been able to keep up with autism, the world of autism. Would you like to enlighten us a bit more about what's going on there?
Absolutely. So I'm probably not going to be a fan for a few of your viewers, as I have a fairly decent viewpoint of the current administration here in Ontario.
Okay.
That might not be popular with some people. But I think that where we are with Premier Ford is that he's done a fairly decent job. During the pandemic, they rolled out a program in which individuals were able to, depending on their age, receive up to $21,000 in one-time stimulus funding. That's huge. That's unheard of. That helped a lot of families weather a scenario that, the pandemic was, for so many people, so detrimental in so many different ways. But $21,000 to be able to help get respite people in, supports, all that sort of thing, that was huge. The passport programs over the years that have been put in place allows, again, the same sorts of things. Cash flow allows for respite receipt for the families, allows for items to be purchased to be able to, like what James is trying to do, unlock your child, focus on your child. We're not talking about just a tablet. We're not talking about a new TV. We're talking about experiences where you're able to get out into the community, create a pattern of behavior, and focus the individual on positive experiences within that. So I know that might not be super popular with some people. I do have these political battles almost on the daily with the world that I live in. But yeah, I think that the Conservatives done a fairly decent job. Always room for improvement. However, I think that they've done a decent job through this process. One of the big things that I think that we need to continue looking forward, and one of the big fears that I see in parents, is succession planning. What happens if I get hit by a bus this afternoon? What happens to Jimmy, Johnny, or Sally, right? So the ministry itself has not done well with that, right? The processes for which children or adolescents or even adults, for them to end up into care scenarios is not a good thing for most parents. It's the last thing they ever want to see. However, if you have a we'll call them, lower functioning autistic person, there's going to be a certain amount of responsibility that is on the family, and then there's a certain amount of responsibility that's put on the community. And what we've got to figure out now in the next years to come is, as we're going through this baby boomer generation that's stepping back and stepping out of the lives, they're passing away in numbers. Well, we're seeing autism spike in the numbers. the next generation, over the next 30 years, we're going to see these individuals that are currently living at home with mom and dad, and they're going to become 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old individuals, live long, healthy, normal lives, and their parents are going to pass away. What do we do then with them? So the organization that I started, ran, and then I sold off my interest recently was called Respite Services Ontario. And what we focused on was trying to bring people into the home, provide respite services for families, and take, during those critical times, whether it be mom, dad, sick, infirmed, whatever, you need to provide services for these individuals. So that was kind of our game plan, and it was very successful. We had a great business going. However, we had a Liberal government at the time that I found was almost detrimental to what we were trying to do. They wanted to bring everything in government, as where I think the private sector has a place to play in this as well. And that goes back to what James is building. James is building a private organization. He's trying to build a course. He's trying to build programs to allow parents to work with their children. There's a place for private and there's a place for governmental partnerships. And we have to meander that. And that's going to be a long, drawn out process, as everything is. But it needs to be a conversation that we have, and it has to be earnest. We have to do this in the next, 15 or 20 years is too long. We need something now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you're talking about private and public. And James, you have your service that you're doing, which is, for, I guess, for people that, would you say, have some funds to be able to access your service? And what can they do if they don't, but they really need help with their child with autism or their adult with autism?
Absolutely. So right now, all of my videos are free. The course I'm making, I'm hoping to obviously make some money at it, but all the videos are free. I encourage them to go find Autism's Perspective on TikTok, on YouTube. I also have a Facebook site, and all the videos are snippets of the information that I think that is important. But also recently, I've had a couple of people reach out to me, just private message me and ask me questions. They just, or share frustrations. I've had parents just write a whole bunch of stuff about, what their day looked like and how there was an explosion and how they kind of dealt with it. And basically I just said, oh, I'm so sorry. That's very tough. If you need anything, let me know. And then I never hear from them again. And maybe that moment was just that they needed to share with someone. I don't know. So there are other resources. There's other things online. And I've heard of a company in Ottawa. I can't remember the name right now, but it has to do with autism. And they do that. They help with some sort of funding as well. I wish I could remember the name because it would be important here. But I do want to add to what Pat was just saying. Every parent that I've worked with, their number one question to me is, what happens if I get hit by a bus? They don't phrase it that way, but I like the way Pat phrased it. Smart guy. They're all worried. They're all worried. Like, what am I going to do? I don't make enough money that it will set them for life. It costs a lot of money if you want to privately send them to a group home. If they go on the system, then they might not get their needs met as well. Not that the private companies aren't good. They are. But not that the public companies, the public respite homes and stuff aren't good. They are. But in the private sector, there seems to be more opportunity because it is a money-making organization. So they're able to access more trips. And with this new passport program, which is amazing, if you haven't heard of the passport program, go research it. They will actually return you money for services, like if you want to go on a boat ride, if you want to take your child to the zoo. I'm sure Pat could explain it better because he's my money guy. I'm not sure.
I deal with the funds here. So passport offers for families. Mm-hmm. Wait, yeah, there we go. The camera come back. So Passport offers the financial ability for families in a way that was somewhat an interesting way of funding it through the ministry. So years ago, the government decided that we needed to fund these individuals to a greater extent. However, how do we keep it off the books? It was kind of an odd way of putting it. It's a little bit of my personal perspective, but I think a lot of people would agree. They couldn't just go out and write, a $70 million program. It wouldn't get through in the province of Ontario. So what they did is they created this passport program, and they kind of believed that people wouldn't touch it, right? So some individuals have a couple $1,000s. I have clients that have tens of thousands of dollars a year in passport funding. And they just kind of figured some people will use some of it, some people won't use any of it, and somewhere will fall in between. So it was a bit of a budget meandering, to say the least, but they got to fly that, hey, we got 70 something million dollars passed for this program. Well, a fraction of it gets used every year, and it's a problem. So instead of giving families directly into their pocket a check at the end of the day, they run this program that has oversight and governmental intrusion, I think, but it keeps money flowing. So you come with your receipts, you come with your perspective on what you want to build for your child, and somebody in Ottawa, for lack of a better, or Toronto, here we are, in Ottawa, in Ontario, makes a decision on your life. I think that's problematic. I'm a little bit of a small government type of guy, though. That's a little bit different in this world. When somebody's telling me what I can and cannot buy for my child, I struggle with that. And what I'm saying is our passport program is fantastic. It's put a lot of money into people's pockets for solutions, but it leaves a lot of money on the table. Now, how do we fix that? And that's literally the billion-dollar question, is how do we fix that? And that's where we're at right now. And we have to do it. And that's what I'm saying is where we are right now is that it's a bit of an earnest discussion that we have to have. And I think, what you folks are doing here is doing that. It's allowing us to have these conversations and get some of the other side that a lot of people that I've dealt with, the only time that they, interface with people, other autistic individuals, families, is at the school. So the school has a very narrow lens to look through. They're very apolitical. They're very political in some situations, but it's a very narrow lens. Where you have to get out is out into the public and having real, frank conversations with people. And when you do, you start to realize that there's very limited support, and the limited support, especially for fathers. And it's something that we kind of briefly touched on, Tolu, when we first started this, is it's a big problem for fathers. We see a lot of absence. We see a lot of families that end up being devastated. The divorce rates in autistic households are exponentially higher than in others. So these are things that are all detrimental to men as well as our communities. And I think having these conversations are where we start.
No, there's a lot that you guys have both shared right there. And you guys, I can tell that you guys are both really passionate about talking about autism, helping people with autism, and just the fact that talking about what are the options out there, what is available, what has the government done, how has the government been helpful, how has the government maybe maybe improve their marks in this area, and you did mention fathers and a lot of the people, a lot of households with special needs become devastated because all of a sudden this is not what they thought or planned for, and we talked, and you're right, before we had this session we talked about people grieving the loss of what they thought was going to be a child that would develop normally, and I use that in quotes. And so now let me ask you guys a question. So for you, James, I know that you went to school, you're a social service worker, but you are a male in this field that is predominantly dominated by females. And then for you, Patrick, you came through it through another way, which more of the private way, in terms of private sector to support people in respite, provide respite services. What made you guys both decide to get involved in special needs or respite services, and working with people with autism?
Well, James, you lead off there because your story is much probably more foundationally. Mine tended to be this is where I ended up. I came from the business background. I saw an opportunity. That's how I've always kind of been within my business ventures. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've ran multiple businesses over the years, and I saw a massive need. Now, from an outside entrepreneur, for even someone like yourself, you go, oh, okay, well, is that a little bit, are you leeching? Like, what's the deal here? But like any business, when there's a massive opportunity, a massive shortfall, that's where there's potential. And that's what we were looking to build. And James is going to be a little bit more huggy-feely and why he got into this industry. And he's that guy. He 100%, I've known James for years now. That's 100% who he is as a person. And on the other side of that is the business side of it. That's who I am. That's who I've been. I'm a real estate investor. I monitor the markets pretty closely. That's my world. And if we can tie something together on both ends of that, I think that you can't have just an emotional tie to this. You also have to have a financial and business tie to this, or it won't be there. You have to have both. And that's what I think James is, James is going to tell you his story here now. But I think that's where James is. You have to have the people with the heart, but you also have the financial backing and the sense of the business sense on the backside of it as well. Or they just crash and burn. A lot of best laid intentions never get anywhere. And that's what I think James is looking at. He's fantastic at what he does. He's got the great mentality, and he's learning the business side of it now too, and seeing where to go from here. So.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. So James, yeah, take it away.
I think Pat again is underselling himself. He's one of the biggest hearted men I've ever met, with the hard outer.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. But once you get to know him, you find out that he has a pretty big heart. But so to kind of answer your question, my journey has been different. It hasn't been from the business side. In fact, until I met Pat Ahern, I wouldn't have built Autism in Perspective. Autism in Perspective has been with me since I was 20, but I didn't have the drive or the thought or even the idea of how to get it off the ground. Without Pat Ahern, there would be no Autism in Perspective. There has to be both the heart and the business. And we blended that well together. So I started in social work. My mom was a nurse, and I was quite often at her hospital. And she got me involved in it was a on-site hospital. What it's called is eluding me. But so there were elderly who lived at the hospital because they couldn't live anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So I went there and I did some of the recreation part of it. And I would take them out and I would build we would go to the zoo and we'd do different events and we'd have day trips and we'd paint and we'd bring animals in. And I loved it. I thought it was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I found the school that would give me that. And I started going to that school, and I ended up in a retirement home as a placement. And unfortunately, it didn't go well. I didn't enjoy it because it was, as Pat said, sometimes businesses want to make money and they don't have the heart. And this business had lost its heart. So it really pushed me away from it. So when I got out of school, I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And all of a sudden, this EA job that I knew nothing about, didn't know how to work with kids, thought I was going to work with the elderly. And I started working with this child that was very difficult. I was told that he was very hard to work with, and he and I just hit it off. I was given carte blanche, I think it's called. They said, I don't care what you do. This kid is very hard to reach. He's very violent. Mm-hmm. If you need anyone, call her. I never needed anyone. Because, like I said, I was able to observe him. I was able to help him. We just hit it off. And then from there, it was just kid after kid after kid. And I just learned more and more. The kids that I worked with, and they're my kids. Every single one of them are my children. Every single one of them taught me something. Every single one of them showed me a way. Every single one of them, the keys that I talk about unlocking the world, come from them. They taught it just from observing them and learning how to reach them, so that just built upon itself, and I just kept on trying. My biggest hurdle was that I found it was very hard to transfer skills. So if a child learned how to put on their shoes here at the school, they'd go home and maybe they wouldn't be able to put on their shoes, and that. So I've learned since that's a thing. Transferring skills is hard. Also, I would have a connection with the child, but they go home to the mom or dad, and they would struggle with that. So that I found was a barrier, and I felt bad because I had all these parents saying, oh, you're wonderful. I love what you've done with my kids. My kid has, grown so much, but I don't know how you can, for example, say no to them and they don't do it. Or you can, get them to come over, or, you can high five them. I don't get that. They don't even want me to touch them. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was, I don't know how to get you there. I don't know how to get from what I'm doing to what you're doing. So I had to break that down. Now we were talking about men, and men have a very tough struggle. So I found, and again, this is just my experience. This is no one else's experience. I do have a lot of kids that I've worked with. I do have a lot of families I've worked with, but there are millions of people in the world. So this could be not for you. But I found that there are two people usually in the beginning, and they have this autistic child, which is probably very difficult to deal with, especially at home. And they have their normal money fights, and they have their normal kids fights, and I got to get this here and I got to go over there. And then they have a child that they can't reach, and it's a struggle. It's hard. So that child can't just be alone. You can't just leave them. You can't call a babysitter and go, hey, come on over, watch my kid, because that babysitter isn't going to be able to watch your kid. You're terrified your kid's going to open the front door and walk out and leave. You're terrified that your kid's going to hurt themselves. You're terrified on so many levels. You can't just leave them with anybody. So then it starts a friction. Mm-hmm. And what happens usually is one parent has to stay home. So that causes money issues, because everyone knows right now in this day and age, Pat can tell you, I'm sure, you have to have two incomes. Like I myself, I am a single man now. I have two incomes. I have two full-time jobs that I'm running just for the day-to-day and get ahead. Mm-hmm. So one of you has to stay home, and in this climate, it is usually the mother who stays home. So the mother has that opportunity to have a little bit more connection with the child, whereas the father, he's out there, he's out in the world, he knows what's going on, and he cares about his child, and he loves his child, but he comes home and the child doesn't want anything to do with you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't care, because you don't meet any of those needs. You're not, food's a need. You're not doing that. You're not dressing them. You're not meeting those needs. So the division gets wider and wider and wider and wider. And it's very difficult, especially when we're taught as men that we're not supposed to share feelings. We're not supposed to talk about our difficulties. We're not supposed to reach out. If I reached out to Pat and said, oh man, I had the most terrible day, and start explaining about my kid, in most cases, not with Pat, but in most cases, they don't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. They want to know what's going on. They want to know, let's joke around about baseball or football or whatever it is. So it becomes difficult for men to make that connection with both their wife, because their wife is in the trenches, and also difficult for men to be able to make that connection with the child. I hope that answers.
No, and thank you for touching on that about the challenges that some men may face when their child has autism, and just what it may look like in some families. Like you mentioned, it's not every family, but in some families. I'm just going to take this time to quickly just make a few announcements about our show, and then we'll get back into this topic, guys. It's been a really interesting morning with the two of you. Just for our audience, so that they know, we do have a few live shows that we do on weekly or monthly basis, or semi-monthly. So we have Open Up, which we do on a weekly basis every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have Veely, which is a Tamil live talk show, and it's on Sundays at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have our monthly webinar, which is what you're watching today, which is the first Saturday of every month at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we do bring expertise or organizations and discuss particular topics affecting men or individuals in the world. So today we are talking about autism. We also have our monthly special show, The Unspoken Tears, which is the second Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The focus is to domestic violence against men, bullying, male sexual abuse, traumas, porn addiction, and human trafficking. The next show will be on Saturday, April 9th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topic will be coming home to yourself. We will be having guest speaker Jay who's a transformational coach and a Real Men Talk live show executive producer and host. He will be sharing his life experiences in one of these areas. We also have our Authors Circle, which is authors who have been contributing in the areas of men's matters around the world. They will be participating and sharing their contributions and experiences. And so that will be on the third Saturday of every month from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we do have our podcasts of all of our shows that are available on 6 platforms, including iPhone, Google Play, and so on. Our monthly men's group they do meet. It's for men by men every 2 weeks on Tuesdays from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. through Zoom. The next one will be taking place on Tuesday, April 5th at 6 p.m. And please join through the Zoom link. The link is available on our Facebook page and group. And then we also have our Indigenous peer-to-peer support group called Pass the Talking Stick. It takes place on the fourth Friday of every month from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. through Zoom. So once again, join the Zoom link. It's available on our Facebook page and group. Just so you know, Voice of Men 360 is also proud to be a supporter of the event Spin Today for Youth Tomorrow in honor of the 50,000 youth on the spectrum. They're on the waitlist for services in Ontario. The event took place yesterday, April 1st. And we would like to acknowledge the work the Ontario Autism Coalition is doing. They are a grassroots coalition dedicated to improving the quality of services available to families affected by autism. And on behalf, so going back to what James and Patrick were saying right before we took this little break, on behalf of Voice of Men 360, we would like to thank all the boys and men that have stood beside and supported and advocated for a sibling, child, relative, student, or client on the autism spectrum. Keep up the good work and know that we do see you. And Patrick and James, we definitely see you. So information on how to register for any of our upcoming programs can be found on our Facebook page, Voice of Men 360. Please register and invite your friends to join us. We are always looking for new members or volunteers to join us at the Voice of Men 360. You can always call us at 437-889-8329. Email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Or visit our website at www.voiceofmen360.org. And you can find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are there. And please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So thank you guys for giving me a chance to just kind of share our announcements with our audience today. So let's get back into it. We were touching on the subject of fathers or men just being involved. And you guys touched on how you guys became involved with people with autism. Let me ask you a question. So you guys have both been doing this for some time. You've seen individuals with autism overcome some challenges. Can you guys tell us of a particular time that you've seen someone with autism overcome some really tough challenges and succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about my toughest ever. So I worked with this child. He was in grade 5, and he would hit his head. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, again, I am not a doctor, and there were professionals who guided me and helped me. I did not do this alone. So if you ever have a challenging behavior like self-harm or hurting someone else, reach out and get support. You need to know more than what I'm about to tell you. So anyway, this child would hit his head whenever he got upset. He wore a helmet at all times. We had a cushion that we convinced him that was a safe spot to hit his head. And during that time, I was at the school with him. When he'd get upset, I decided what I was going to do was observe, because I've told you already, observe, observe, observe. So what I did is I observed him, and I noticed what was happening is it was when he got upset, when he got frustrated with something. So one particular time, there was a music video that he loved. And this particular child at the time did not have any expressive language, but did have a little receptive language. So he understood what I was saying, but couldn't get out his words. So he would play this song that soothed him over and over and over again. And I noticed that if it got stuck or it didn't go right back to the right spot that he wanted, he would get more and more and more and more frustrated. And he couldn't fix it himself because he didn't know how. So sometimes he'd lose the video. Sometimes the video would pause or the Wi-Fi would go out, but he didn't know what to do then. So then he'd bang his head. So what I ended up doing is I went over to him. So I would see it. I knew the moment that it was going to happen because I've been watching him. I know, you know what, we're within 5 minutes of him starting to bang his head. And I would allow that to happen, allow him to experience that anxiety, because I needed to give him a new key. I needed to give him a new thing that he could do. So I would go up to him just before I knew it was going to happen. And I'd go like this, help. That's the sign for help, help. And then I would immediately help him. Well, at first, not much changed. He was just happy. Sorry. He was just happy I was helping him. But then I started taking his hands and I put them like that, and I go, help, help. And over time, and time means like it was months and months and months. Over time, he would come over and he'd grab my hands and put them together. He wouldn't say anything because he was nonverbal, and he'd do this, and then I'd fix his iPad, and he'd be successful. And then I found other areas, where that frustration happened, and I was able to block it. And he was more often coming to me for help and less often banging his head. Now, don't get me wrong, he kept banging his head for other things, and I never really, there was never that stop. There, it's any behavior like that is wider than one person. It's very complicated to deal with. I was just lucky enough through observation to find that one aspect of it that I could help with. But there are so many other aspects. I just want to be clear that be careful when you get into these things, because they're dangerous. They're very dangerous. You need professionals. You need to see a doctor, make sure it's not like something they're in pain or something's wrong. A psychologist, or you need other people. You don't just need, this is not something that I would suggest you work on yourself. Anyway, I just think but that was my biggest success. I was shocked at him coming over to me and grabbing my hands when he felt it wasn't me driving this anymore. It was him. And it was just, the first time he did it, I had tears. I was so joyful. And I believe I picked him up and we danced for a bit, because I'm that guy. Yeah.
No, what a beautiful story to just hear about how you helped to reduce how many times he did the self-interested behaviors. And so thank you for sharing that with us. And like you said, like, try to rule out maybe there's biological things going on first, or other things, and that you should probably have a team of people working with you to try to figure out how to support your child, your adult with autism the best. Now, what about you, Patrick?
To me, I'm going to flog James here a little bit more, because he's working on this, but it's something he needs to work on a little bit more. James has been pivotal in making sure that safety and security is first and foremost with a number of his clients. James has dealt with, outside of the school board, in group home type settings, very volatile and downright massively aggressive clients. And I think that was a touchy-feely one, and that's a great experience that James got to share there. But James has made very, very problematic behavioral scenarios go away. It's amazing. I wouldn't be sitting here doing this talk today if I didn't believe wholeheartedly what James Stevens does. So for myself, in dealing with clients, I think the biggest thing, again, is the communication. I think that comes from what I've learned from James over the years. Dealing with clients that have had, augmentative communication, the inability to directly tell you what they need, want, are desiring, they're feeling at that moment, whether they're sick, whether they're tired, whether they're, the positive things. Hey, I want to go play with that ball, right? I want to chase that dog. I want to whatever I want to do, right? I think the biggest thing is watching clients go from violent outbursts, like really quite violent outbursts, to where they're able to come to you and explain something to you through augmentative communication, whether it's use of, the tools that James has put into place in a lot of the programs for like picture boards, right? Setting schedules. James's uncanny ability to create consistency in a client's world. And that goes back to, is that I think some of this is, we're going to get James working on selling himself. And that's a huge thing for me, for him. But the consistency, the ability to communicate in a world that otherwise is totally locked up, as James says, has been huge. And I've watched years and years and years of watching it through James into clients and vice versa. So it's a fantastic experience when you can watch somebody who has struggled succeed, whether it be your children, whether it be someone in the community, whether it be an Olympian on TV. We just went through the Olympics, right? You get a guy who wins the gold medal and you're like, whoa, way to go. While you're sitting there eating a bag of chips with all the other people that, they had a point deduction, you're like, loser, right? So I think it's a fantastic thing to watch somebody that's the underdog really pull it out. And that's, I think that's human nature. But I think where we are right now in kind of the world of autism is that we have to continue driving forward. And what that looks like is, it's a bit of a weird world, and we've got to continue. Our numbers continue to grow up as far as diagnosed cases every year. Our financial aspects that are really, really important, and we're not doing enough for them. We're trying. Like I said earlier, is that I'm probably not that popular when it comes to my political perspective, because I do think that the provincial government has done a pretty good job. Going to the well and finding money during the pandemic was great. The passport programs that come from the Liberal government and the Conservative government, most of them have been buffered up. So yeah, I think that we're seeing very positive things. Now what's next? And I think having these conversations and touching base on what you folks have been doing, this is not happening in the world of men. When I was given this opportunity to have this conversation with you guys, I was like, oh, what is this? Doing a little bit of research, you folks are doing a well-needed service in the world. There's not enough out there. Just the conversation you just had there, explaining the topics that you're going to be discussing over the next little while, a lot of those hit home for us men. Not that we're willing to discuss it per se and at the bar with the boys, but a lot of those things hit home for us. And it's important work that you folks are doing, and I thank you for what you folks are doing. I think it's impressive.
Thank you for that. And I think you're absolutely right. It's having these dialogues and having these conversations and seeing men like you guys come here and openly talk about, how passionate you are about this field and why we shouldn't misjudge, a person with autism, and why we should want to unlock their world and get to know them better. And so, and just seeing that passion and the love between you guys as friends, but truly,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
To see that come out is very important, because oftentimes I think people don't express, how much they're grateful for someone or how much they see in somebody. And so this is why we do have Voice of Men 360 to get these opportunities out there and to talk about these things. Now, our time is almost up, but I do want to ask two more questions. So the first question is, James, can you just tell us a little bit more about your program for families or parents that are out there, men that are listening, that may be interested and want to know how they can maybe access the actual program, not just the free content? And then also, why do you guys think it's important that we have World Autism Awareness Day? So those are my two questions. You're muted.
You're muted, buddy.
Start again. I'm back. I just wanted to reiterate what Pat was saying. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. I think he and I have had these quiet talks about how the whole landscape of being a man is changing. Where being a man, even 20 years ago when I was, younger, is vastly different than what it's supposed to be today. And in fact, we're on loose sand because everyone keeps telling us what we're doing wrong, but no one's replacing what we're supposed to do right. So I think what you're doing is great. A lot of amazing topics that I think that men should join and understand. As for me, Autism in Perspective is just it started out as a dream. I met Pat. Pat made it a mission and showed me the steps to follow. He undersells himself just as much as I do. But so what Autism in Perspective does is I put out video content, understanding what to help parents understand how to unlock their child's world. I want to give them the keys to unlock their child's world. And there's several different keys. There's stuff like he touched on, pitch your schedules and different tools that we can use to help reach our children. I also talk about different ways to help the parent, it's okay that you made a mistake. It's okay that your child is upset. So my series of videos are just small snippets, very easy to watch. And if you ever have any questions about them, you can reach out to me and I'll try to help you. But it's basically just right now, it's about getting the information out there. If a parent can take one of my videos and it makes their life a little bit easier and it helps them to help reach a child, I'm in. I just want that. I want parents to have a connection with their children. It is unfair that a parent can't connect with their child. That is just I have two children myself. I have a great connection with them. It's not always great, as every parent knows, but I talk to them all the time. We have a great connection. And for these other parents, it hurts me to even know that it's hard to what do you talk about? How do I help you? What am I going to do with you today that make your life better? So I want to do that for these parents. So all you have to do is search up Autism in Perspective and you'll find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. whatever. And if you want to go into Facebook and direct message me and you just want to tell me your story and want me to say, wow, I'll do that for you. If you have a question that's specific, I will try and help you. Like I said, every child is individual. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're the parent and you know what's best for your child. It doesn't matter that I'm the professional. You do. If you take the time and you observe, you will have a far better understanding than I could ever have of your child. And that's wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah. So again, kind of, moving on from that as well, and then elaborating a little bit, is that what James is building is kind of an opportunity for parents to access 30 years of the profession. And that's what he's building in here. So when he has the opportunity and he says, like, yeah, your child, absolutely, there's no question. That's your role as a parent. That's your role as a father, right? To know your child. The issue is that sometimes you just don't have the resources. You don't have the experience. You don't know what hit or missed, over a 30-year career. So that's what James is building. And it's something that he's building slowly and developing it so that it works well for a large group, but is also going to have that opportunity to kind of, micro down into the individual level. As far as the second question that you had, Tolu, why is it important that we have Autism Month? Awareness, right? I think that I can go back into my personal experience when I was a young man, going through the education system here in Ontario, Canada. You had a very limited exposure to individuals of special needs, right? So we're seeing now where more people are enrolled in school. I'm not quite as old as James or anything like that, but we had institutions in this country. We had a very segregated society based on whether it be the physical attributes or mental health attributes or all that sort of thing. So we've pushed back and we've made a lot of progress that way. Lots still to do, but we're lowering the bar for stigma. So when you have individuals in the school board and you have a very highly volatile, even autistic individual, but everyone remembers them as just, Ben or Steve or Carl or
Eastern Standard Time.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
To see that
to access 30 years of the profession. And that's what he's building in here. So when he has the opportunity and he says, like, yeah, you know, your child, absolutely, there's no question. That's your role as a parent. That's your role as a father, right? To know your child. The issue is that sometimes you just don't have the resources. You don't have the experience. You don't know what hit or missed, you know, over a 30-year career. So that's what James is building. And it's something that he's building slowly and developing it so that it works well for a large group, but is also going to have that opportunity to kind of, you know, micro down into the individual level. As far as the second question that you had, Tolu, why is it important that we have Autism Month? Awareness, right? I think that I can go back into my personal experience when I was a young man, you know, going through the education system here in Ontario, Canada. You had a very limited exposure to individuals of special needs, right? So we're seeing now where more people are enrolled in school. I'm not quite as old as James or anything like that, but we had institutions in this country. We had a very segregated society based on whether it be the physical attributes or mental health attributes or all that sort of thing. So we've pushed back and we've made a lot of progress that way. Lots still to do, but we're lowering the bar for stigma. So when you have individuals in the school board and you have a very highly volatile, even autistic individual, but everyone remembers them as just, you know, Ben or Steve or Carl or Nancy, it allows them to go to the community 25, 35, 45 years ago and have a different respect for an individual, respect for someone where they came from. It's a little bit desensitizing to the community as a whole. So when we have months and we create this awareness, it allows people to kind of step back and go, oh, I remember that person from high school or elementary school. Yeah, they were a little different at the time, but allowed me to step back and have a bit of perspective on the grander scheme of things. So I think, again, organizations like yourself that are right there, allowing for these conversations, allowing and pushing, you know, the kind of the information around Autism in, month, I think it's great. And if we can continue to do this, we can continue to break down those barriers that are problematic and allow more people to interact and interface with someone that they might otherwise not. And I think that's always for the best.
I think Pat defined that well. Like the reason autism awareness is so important is that, but there's also another aspect that parents see day to day. They're out in the community with their child and their child throws a fit on the ground. And people around them are judging and going, oh, they should do this, they should do that. Well, it's a little bit more complicated when your child is autistic. You can't just always just pick them up and carry them off like you can a regular child. You can't do that. There's so many other aspects. And also, you know, there's people in our community that every day you see them in the community, they walk up and they go, I got a watch. My watch is blue and I really enjoy my watch. Do you know how many watches there are? And when there's this awareness, you can stop and go, you know what? This person knows more about watches than anyone in the world. And it's fascinating. And if I just take the time to spend a few moments to engage with that person, not only will I make their day, but hey, maybe I'll learn more about watches or whatever the topic is. And I think the more we express what autism is and get that information out there and how it affects our community and the people around us, the more accepting we become, the more time we'll take to understand the children and the adults that are living with this every day.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for, you know, just sharing your insights and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge with us. And I just want to leave our audience with one thing before we go. What would you guys, so aside from Autism in Perspective, correct? That's your business name, your TikTok, all your social media handles, right? For what you do, James. What other resources or links can we connect our audience with?
That's a very good question. Pat? So
I think you got to go back to the kind of the side of things that. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say I highly recommend Passport. That's like
right. That was what I was going to go to. Is a lot of this at the end of the day
as well.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think what we have here is like James talked about, is some of the financial issues and therefore the home life issues that come across with this. You have to reach out to people within your community. You have to reach out to your community yourself. Get in touch with your MP, your MPP, and they're going to have a list of programs and options. This is, my father had a saying, and he actually just recently passed away. So I try to flog as much as he possibly, all the sayings that he possibly can. But he had a saying about trying to get action done from somebody in organizations. And the saying was, you got to get them to take their feet off the desk. And in this organization and in the world that we have right now, and especially the government structures we have right now, you've got to be the squeaky wheel. You've got to get the people to take the feet off the desk. So when you're reaching out to these programs, no is not the answer. You cannot accept no. You cannot accept we don't do that. You cannot accept any of this. I promise you, if you stick to it, they will find a solution for you because they don't want to deal with you. So continue to be that squeaky wheel. Get everything you possibly can for your child. Why wouldn't you? That's your job as a parent. That's a job as a father, as a mother, as a caregiver. Keep pushing, keep fighting, and eventually it'll be successful. Get in touch with your MP, your MPP. Call local supports. If you look up autism.ca, they have great resources. Again, you have to push, you have to fight for what you want, but you'll get there. And it's all a process. You got to think that these people that you're supporting have an entire life to live. You just need to be a big piece of it at the right time. Just time it right.
Pat's 100% right. Don't accept no. Never accept no. The parents that get the help in the schools and in the organizations are the ones that didn't accept no. They weren't rude and they didn't yell and scream, but they also were driven. They were there. They showed up every day. They wrote the letters every day. They formed meetings around them to get the yes. Absolutely, 100%. Don't give up because that's your child, and your child needs your help because they don't have a voice. You need to be their voice, and he's absolutely right. The other thing that's important that I have already seen, and it's not something it's something that always happens. Once a parent has a child with autism, they tend to reach out to other parents with autism. And I would highly recommend you do that. The amount of greatness that I've seen in these groups of women and men who have children with autism, they help each other out in so many different ways with finding resources, or this school does this, or this person does this, or if you go here, you'll be able to do this, or even like something as simple as a dentist. This dentist is the dentist you want to go to because they're going to come and meet your child and his needs. Or this barber, getting a haircut. You wouldn't believe, like, you got to get your child's haircut. I used to have a parent that would cut her child's hair in the sleep. And that's how, like, could you imagine? So she would like do a couple of minutes and he'd kind of wake up. And so her finding a barber that would do that while he's awake and allow him to like walk around the room and like, those are huge things. And you can get that from a nice support group. And support groups are easy to find. You just have to reach out to, like, if you see someone in the schoolyard that also has an autistic child with autism, just walk up to them and go, hey, wow. And then have that conversation. And that's where you're going to find your main resources. But Pat's absolutely right. Don't give up. Don't ever, like, if you walk in and they say, we can't do that, you'll find a way. There's a way, a workaround for everything. And the more days you show up, the more they will make it happen. Just, I've seen both ways. I've seen parents, because they're at their end, be rude and they yell and scream and they swear and they're derogative. Those are the parents that hit a wall. If you walk in, you're courteous, you're kind, and you keep on saying, this is my baby. My baby is going to be successful and you are going to help me. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen for you.
Hello everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Connie Butera and I am a local autism parent as well as a counseling and psychotherapy student in the province of Ontario, as well as a longtime volunteer with the Children's Treatment Network supporting families of children with autism spectrum disorder. Thank you for having me and for asking me to speak about the question, what is the autistic soul? And I have to say, I loved this question, especially as an autism parent myself, because it resonates wholeheartedly with me and my sort of journey being an autism parent myself. And so when we talk about what is the autistic soul, it's very important for us to understand the individual outside of the diagnosis. And so for someone like my son at a very young age, I dealt with a lot of behaviors. I was having a lot of issues with him. And at the end of the day, I'd be crying and wondering, am I doing something wrong? Do I have a bad kid? Am I a bad parent? Am I spoiling him? And it wasn't until I received a diagnosis of my son and I really spent a lot of time researching autism and what it means to be on the autism spectrum that I really started to understand where the behaviors were stemming from and how a lot of the behaviors we were dealing with were a result of the diagnosis and the lack of support and the sensory issues and all the things that I know now today. And so once again, when we talk about the autistic soul and when we look at the individual as the individual that they are, and we have deeper meaning and understanding into the behaviors that we deal with and the challenges, that's when we start understanding the person and their soul. And so through IBI therapy, ABA therapy, social skills classes, medication, therapists, school support, having an IEP in place, having EAs available in school, through all the parent education I did myself, I now understand my son's soul as an individual, as well as someone who is on the autism spectrum. Our children, our youth, and individuals on the autism spectrum have a beautiful soul. Children and individuals like my son, they have a heart of gold. They mean well. They want to do well. And it's our job as their caregivers, their teachers, and as a future helping professional myself to help understand their needs and to help support them in the best way possible. We need to set them up for success so that they can do their best. And when we educate ourselves through platforms such as this, and thank you so much for putting on even a seminar like this today so that individuals such as all of us can really learn more about autism so that we can set up our youth and our individuals for success. And so, yes, when we speak about what is the autistic soul like, the individual soul, a lot of that understanding comes from educating ourselves. And so if I were to leave everyone with any message today, it's please tap into the local services and support. Educate yourself on autism spectrum disorder because we are dealing with bright, beautiful individuals here. And when we really learn to understand them and their needs and we support them at their level, that's when you'll truly understand their soul. And so I highly recommend several agencies. I'm from York Region area in Ontario, Canada. And so our local service agencies that I highly recommend would be Carey's Place Autism Services. They're based out of Aurora, Ontario. They offer tons of free online workshops and seminars, even if you're new to diagnosis or perhaps you just want to educate yourself a bit more. I highly recommend their Introduction to Autism program. It's free, it's online, just takes a couple of hours and it'll give you the basics of what you need to know. They also have additional classes that dig into the topic a little bit further. If you want to know a bit more, let's say about executive functions, or if you want to know a little bit more about sensory processing needs. By taking educational classes like this as a parent, as a caregiver, a grandparent, or even as a professional, you'll be able to understand how to support that individual and their needs so that you can get into their soul a bit further and have that meaning and understanding behind perhaps some of the behaviors that you're dealing with. As a parent mentor myself with the Children's Treatment Network, if you're a parent out there that's new to diagnosis, it can be very scary. There are a lot of services and support out there, and perhaps connecting with the Children's Treatment Network and asking to be paired up with a parent mentor such as myself who's been there and done that and been through this journey, and we can hold your hand along the way and sort of point you in the right direction and be your biggest cheerleader along the way. Reach out to CTN and see if you can get matched up with a parent mentor. And perhaps if you're not in that area, just get online, speak to your doctor. They'll be able to connect you with the local service agencies in your area. So thank you once again for having me. My name was Connie Butera. I'm a local autism parent, as well as parent mentor with the CTN, as well as counseling psychotherapy student. Enjoy yourselves.
Yeah. So the key is, don't give up. Research the resources that are out there. I know that there's, for children and adults, it's different. So I know there's also the Ministry of Community Services for Children or something like that. And then there's also the ministry that deals with community services and adult services as well. So there's things like they can look into that. And then the DSO, Developmental Services Ontario, to register their adult children, because oftentimes they age out of services, and then you're wondering, like, what am I doing next, right? There's no more school, there's nothing. But the developmental services is actually one of the ways that you will get access to passport funding, like you guys mentioned earlier, registering through them as well. So it is good that you guys are, like I said, a wealth of information here. It was a pleasure talking to the two of you today, and talking to us about why we need to be more aware of autism. What is it? What's going on? What are services are available out there? What are the keys to unlocking your child? And also knowing that, yes, sometimes you may need to tap into the private aspect of it, the private sector, to get really what you need for your child. So thank you, both of you, James and Patrick, and we really appreciate having you here on Voice of Men 360, our monthly webinar, and we look forward to maybe spending more time with you guys in the future.
Pleasure to lose. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.